So, what is taking place in this piece of art that you have here?
Basically, in all the works that are shown here, or much of the works that I am showing here, I found myself interested in cognitive processing and what I call the residue of memory. The cognitive processing has to do with how information is processed to the brain and how we are aware of certain things. And what I call the residue of memory is that in the case of memory we have stories to tell, but in those cases in which the stories are not rememberable or we forget, something is left, and it's a settling of parts that we can't put together. And so the dots on the surface have to do with organizational patterns. And these organizational patterns come together on a retention of memory or a desire to find order where there at first appears to be no order. And so these are like meditations. I put each dot down with no intentions of making a picture that represents something. But in the course of doing this, I discover myself and the viewer that something does take place which has to do with organization. So I can say that in some cases people who are not even sometimes basically interested in art will look at my work and they're engaged. They're not quite sure why, but they know something's happening here. And so they're drawn into it. So just as the Buddhists or some religions which use beads to count, to slow their metabolism down to be centered, these dots also represent that for me. What comes out of it is organization despite chaos, despite things that by appearance have no order. And some of them do not have dots, and they deal more with the memory of association. And they also deal with issues of painting, the history of painting, and the concerns about painting. Yes.
So color is also important when you
strangely, yes. Lately, I've been my works have moved towards color, and I think perhaps also I'll carry on both interests. The color, of course, changes everything because the color relates to mood very much, and so living out here in BC, and I've been here 10 years. Color is very much a part of the richness of our experience here. It's not gray geometry, it's vast, it's open, and so I'm introducing color. This yellow one here, this gold one, over here, is called As Buddha Breathes. And you'll see a kind of line running up the middle. This one is, I think, called breath and path. As we breathe, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but it's like breathing patterns of, and then there's the simple walking path that goes beside it. So, in a sense, they're attached to a physicality, the physicality of life. But sometimes my desire is actually to make a painting that that's almost not there, to make it almost invisible. This doesn't help the viewer or when you're printing in a publication or a magazine because there's no graphic separateness, right? But there is something, obviously, and it's this residue of where sources come from. They're not quite developed, but they're on their way, so to speak. Either they're fading into the distance or they're arriving. The dots again, you see here, things are, you can see the composition of both this painting and that painting, and you'll notice as you move in, there is textures. So my previous exhibition, which toured Ontario, and that was 4 months at the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria, contained the Silverworks, the beginning of Silverworks in 1985 and 86. And it dealt with not so much the issues of painting, but the chemistry of processes and materials. Air, water, heat, the process of evaporation, just like nature, leaves, again, a residue, a physical residue. So here, if we look at the surface, you'll see little tidal waves. Each one of them has a kind of wave to it. And this is distributed all over, and as you see over time, the paint starts to take on a characteristic which expresses something about the nature and the chemistry of the materials. And in time, it is a drawing process, and then it settles. It doesn't change anymore as far as our eye can see. Right?
Yeah.
You'll see if we go over here to the blue one, and you zero in on that, I treat the surface in the first layer, and then again in the second layer. And it contains each dot, if you would call it, a unit, has its own characteristics. Some of them collapse, just as use the term black hole. It's a collapse. It's a reduction of space into a black hole, in which, in the case of ordinary chemistry, and depending upon a number of factors in science, they can either expand or find themselves collapsing. And this is just a very what's taking place here is because of the materials. And I only use the demonstration of black hole because you have reverse polarities. So there's an expansion and a reduction of energy. Is there anything else that... These here are more visual. Cases, yeah. If you'd like to, over here, these are visual of images of nature, in the sense they're a micrology of vision, as in cellular structure. And in here, there's like images that we may, like in dreams, see see these conditions in a dreamlike way. And this continues all the way through. There are just different treatments of it. These smaller works attempt to, in a sense, do something different. This relates more obviously to like the sky and clouds, and the decoding of the dots in here give to an expression of points in which to follow, because the nature of a cloud is that it's continuously changing. This gold one here, in a way, refers back to some of the larger pieces. And this one here carries with it a bit of an illusion. That's why I call it, this is not an illusion, because it's painted in. You think the canvas is damaged and it's not stretching, but it's painted in. Yeah.
Hi.